Have you ever wished you could talk to animals? You can. Welcome to Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon, and I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive with animal love languages. And this is my ever-present 22-year-old feathery sidekick, Pearl Cuts. He never misses an episode. You know, I will never forget my very first experience connecting with animals on an intuitive level. My very first thought was, everyone can do this. And we can. Animal communication taps into the universal language of all species. This is a language that dives deeper than spoken words into the realm of the senses, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting and smelling, sensing, and knowing. The universal language of all species shows up most clearly in our survival instincts. How do we find breakfast without becoming breakfast? We stay tuned into each moment, right as it is happening. Right, my love? Yes, we never miss an opportunity, right? But that is not all that talking with animals is good for. We can use it to tune into the animals in our own lives, our pets. We can connect to the wildlife we share space with. We can uncover hidden gems of truth about ourselves and how we are connected to our world. Animal communication is always happening, but until we tune in, we won't know it or be able to participate. In this series, I talk with amazing people who have learned how to speak this universal language of all species. Learn from them, discover new abilities you didn't know you had, and begin talking to animals today. And today's special guest, all the way from, is it Wales?
Scotland.
Scotland. Scotland. I love Scotland. I love Scotland. I spent 3 brilliant rainy days there, and I have never forgotten it. I've never forgotten it. This is Miss Kate Foggo, and she is with Barking at the Moon, animal intuitive and animal communication. She also does a lot of really other neat healing and intuitive modalities for animals and people to build deeper bonds and foster healing and connection and love, right? Just like the love we share. So I am really excited to have Miss Kate with us today. We were chatting before the episode began about how much I love her kind of deep sea vibe with the purple and the fishes and I'm really into it. And with the pandemic, I've missed being able to get out and get to the ocean. So I'm kind of having a virtual experience this morning. Kate, thanks so much for being willing to be with us and be a part of this series. You know, the first thing I always like to ask our special guests is, you know, when did you know that talking with animals was even possible?
Well, this might surprise you, Shannon, but actually, not until I met Danielle, really. I love your expression, animal sensitive, because I think that's probably what I was. I don't have any psychic background. I didn't have any knowings. I didn't know. I knew I was different, but probably not for the reasons that I recognize now. I absolutely didn't. Just before I met Danielle McKinnon, who I trained with, I had started muscle testing. So I used that as a really basic form of communication with the animal. So in that sense, that was a huge leap forward for me, but it meant that I could ask my animals yes, no questions. So, you know, you can get quite a lot out of that, and it's like that to me was amazing. So, but knowing that you could actually go further than that, I genuinely didn't know until my sister, who lives in England, had come up to see me, and she said, we have to watch this. And it was one of Danielle's webinars, and that was it. And I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, people do this. It's just incredible.
Yeah. You know, I remember, I honestly, it's part of the reason I asked this question is I actually don't remember how I first knew that animal communication was even possible. But, you know, I started hiring animal communication professionals many years ago and never doubted it. I mean, I always felt right from the very first moment of connect, I always felt very validated in the messages I was receiving from my animals, like some part of me already knew.
Yes.
And I too have a background with muscle testing, which I've used a little bit with this work as well. But, you know, it was just like, there's something else there.
Oh, and I mean, I think I've seen a psychic in the past, and I'm absolutely fascinated with it. There's no question in my mind. I believed all that, but I guess the opportunity wasn't really there. I didn't know it was so available, if you know what I mean. Otherwise, I'd have been at it all the time. I've never had
Yep.
any doubt about that. There's never any
Yep.
question in my mind that there's more to it, but it just really wasn't. I came from an R&D background, you know. I didn't know
Right.
people who did stuff like that.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's so interesting because I feel like our world is changing so much that, now just almost through necessity, almost it's that survival instinct kicked it into a higher gear or a higher level. We're kind of almost being forced to, or forcing ourselves to kind of open and I also think that the TV has really opened it up, not just the YouTube with the webinars, but some of the series on psychic mediums and animal psychics, and more experience with people living longer lives and having more chance to delve into different aspects of what it means to be alive. Maybe we didn't have time before, when we had to chop our own wood and draw on our own water and, go out there and join the food chain of life and hunt for our dinner. We didn't have time to maybe explore these or codify them. Maybe we did some of it, but we didn't have time to think about how or why or teaching it or any of that. It just happened or it didn't. So I really love that there's this kind of global awakening, if you will, and there's a lot more acceptance, because it really makes it easier for those of us who do feel different to find our tribe. And I agree with you. Danielle has been amazing.
Well, this is it. Since I joined her classes, it must have been about the September, October or something, just before COVID.
Yeah.
But when like COVID hit, I just started her classes then. I think I'd sort of I don't think I joined a community until I joined the classes, but I've been so immersed in that community that I actually don't know what's going on in the rest of the world, in that since I've changed so much that this is part of my vocabulary now, I haven't actually been let out in public, so I'm not really sure how it would go down. If I meet normal people again, are they going to think I'm a fruitcake? Probably, possibly. Maybe they always have. I'm not sure I care, and that's the difference now. But things that I just would not have said a year ago just fall off the tongue now, because I've spent so much time with this amazing community. It's just great. I agree. Yeah.
I agree. And it's kind of like, I feel like I have, because of course you and I share Danielle as a teacher. And for those of you who are watching or listening and don't know, Danielle McKinnon is a wonderful animal communication teacher and author, a speaker, a leader, and incredibly gifted psychic. And so both Kate and I share a background. I'm a little newer than Kate is, but we are really enjoying Danielle's Be Open community as well, which is her Facebook group and a private community for folks that want to be joyful, different people together and be able to share this universal language of being able to speak with everything that's alive, not just each other. And so I guess the next natural question would be, when did you realize that you could talk to animals? What, like, your first experience of it?
It would have been in practice with Danielle's course. So I knew from the yes, no.
Fantastic.
And I was in never any doubt that there was a way of communication there, but obviously it's limited. But it takes a lot, as you'll know, going through it yourself. You want so much validation. And even when it was looking back, it was perfectly obvious to me that I was getting stuff that there was no way I could have known it. There's still so much doubt, and I think that's the biggest learning you have when you do anything like this, is actually the growth personally in learning to trust yourself. I look back on things and go, oh my God, it's so obvious that the information you're getting, there's no way anyone could make that up. So it's only been probably about a year, really. And my trust is still growing. And I think it will just keep going.
Yeah, so that's really important for those of you. Of course, one of the primary drivers for me launching this series is because, of what I shared in the intro is that, my very first thought, and it for me too was, I remember being so nervous with that initial, I took Danielle's Foundations of Animal Communication, and there was this moment in the course when she was like, okay, now we're actually going to do it. And I was like, oh no, anything but that, because I'm going to find out that I'm the only one in the world that can't do this. Right. And I remember doing it, and I remember that the animal was like, an iguana, and I didn't get like iguana per se. It's not like the animal paraded out and said, I am a yellow-skinned iguana. But instead of the typical fur or even feathers, which would have been so great, right? I got this yellow skin. I was just seeing it in my head, and I was just so blown away, because I have a special heart for so-called exotic animals. I think we're all kind of exotic, but each one of us is exotic. But I have a tortoise and a box turtle and parrot. I've always shared my life with parrots and turtles, and as well as dogs. And so, it was just this validation of being like, man, like, how did I not know that I could do this for 50 years? Like, how did that somehow escape me? And I really feel it's when Homo sapiens kind of started to really separate from the food chain and lose that constant tune, that the radio dial being tuned into the present moment all the time. Because if you don't, you're going to end up on somebody's plate, And now we have these little guys for pets, right? And we're tuned out most of the time. We're tuned into the past. We're tuned into the future. Our survival instinct is kind of skewed in these unusual directions. And so I just became instantly passionate about sharing this knowledge, because it feels like the one way I can make a huge impact on the survival of our planet and our wildlife, because we can't care about what we feel like we can't connect with. And the more we all are able to wake up to this wonderful gift, not only do we have new creative tools to solve problems, whether it's the squirrel that won't stay out of our attic, or I think somebody talked about the other day in Be Open that they were able to talk a wasp out of their house just by giving it inner guidance, which is amazing.
I've never had that work. I've tried that.
Well, it takes the time it takes, but shoot, for her, it sure was worth it. And I found a lot of validation in that as well. There's just all kinds of, but most of all, we just realize how alike we are on the inside. And the more we realize how alike we are, I think the easier it becomes to care and to find new creative ways of solving problems, rather than just kind of resorting to the carrot and the stick method that we've kind of grown up learning about. So, of course, the question that everybody is probably thinking about and asking about on the inside as they're listening or watching, because some of you are getting this as a podcast, some of you are getting this as our YouTube series, is, other than words like amazing or unbelievable or wow, what is it really like talking to animals? Like, what does it feel like?
I think when I'm in it, I think nothing of it, because it's so natural. Afterwards, it's either a beautiful reading and I'm just blown away by it, or I'm sort of full of self-doubt, less and less self-doubt. Now it's more I'm blown away. What I feel, people feel different things. I don't often get their emotions. I don't know. I think it's linked to your personality. It's almost like law of attraction. I think what you're looking for, you'll find that aspect of them. I'm not saying that you distort it, but an example would be during our class, Danielle had us connect to an animal that had had a really tragic life. It was one of the elephants, and a lot of people got a lot of pain. I actually got the happiness. But see, all of that is true because the animal was actually in a sanctuary and happy, but it had a terrible past. So it's almost like you will get a different aspect of an animal. The biggest validation for me when I'm speaking to an animal is I will get goosebumps when you hit on something or get something, and you just get that all over, goosebumps, and it's just wonderful. And then you just know it's like your animal saying, this is real, this is happening, you can feel it. And if you get on a roll with an animal, I just get so much humor off animals, and it really, I think I was just practicing with a friend once, and I went outside to do the chickens afterwards, and it's like when someone's cleaned the windows and the whole world just looks like a little bit brighter. And apparently that's how they talk about it when you raise your vibration, that everything just shines a little bit more. And I have noticed that. So it definitely raises your vibration, because I've noticed that afterwards things just look a little bit crisper, a little bit more colorful, a little bit more shiny. So it's a mixture of all those things. The actual feeling while you're talking to the animal, I think it depends on what the conversation's about, because obviously people are addressing different things, but when you're in it, it just feels, it's like a conversation. The first time I read a goldfish, I didn't have time to think, oh, goldfish, how am I going to communicate with a goldfish? What does a goldfish have to say? Same as everybody else, it turns out. It doesn't feel any different whether it's a goldfish or a gorilla or a, they've all got the same things to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really resonate with that. It does feel like the world is, I mean, it's kind of, on two levels. It's like, it feels for me like, any great conversation would feel when you're really vibing with another being, and each animal seems to have their own energy, just like each person. Some people, some beings, I'm kind of increasingly moving to that word, because it's kind of like, I'm like like saying things that I wouldn't maybe have even known how to say it, what I was feeling, before I started really studying this a little more formally. But it can feel even more bright and shiny. It could also feel even a little bit darker, especially when the connection isn't clear, or there are some heavy issues that are are being worked out. And I really love how you shared about raising your vibration, because of course we're learning how there's this 3D level, which is more of the survival instinct level, which is kind of like, am I getting enough food? Am I getting enough water? Am I warm enough or cool enough? Do I feel like I have safety and shelter? And then there's this 5D level, which is, this beautiful universal connect. It's like a phone line, a party line, if you will. I'm really dated myself there, but everybody can jump on, and kind of have a group chat. And so on one level, I was just like, well, I just had a conversation. That was my first experience where everyone can do this. It was like I just talked to somebody. I've been talking to people for 50 years. It's just like I just have thought that species mattered, and it turns out it really doesn't. And on the other hand, it's like this incredible natural high, this euphoria where you're like, oh my God, I just, talked to my parrot. I just talked to the neighbor's dog. I just talked to this animal that lives halfway across the country, and it's such a relief. It's like, I just feel like I've found this part of myself that makes me make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And thank goodness for it, not a minute too late, or too soon rather.
I think it's just so humbling, especially when you realize that the animals are here. And I think looking back, have I ever suspected it? I've seen it. So it was taught first by Danielle, but I was going back over some Abraham Hicks stuff, because I was getting in a real tizzy about whether I should eat dairy or not, and going into animal cruelty, and I got really upset. And I was trying to look at things to make me feel better, and it was actually something from the 1990s, but it's all about, it all reinforces what Danielle says, which is animals are here for our pleasure, for our evolution. I mean, they're here for their own experience, sure, but they're really here to support us and to enhance our experience on this world. And that's so humbling. It's just, I don't want as a human to feel like the sort of prima donna about that. It's more that I'm humbled that these incredibly intelligent beings are just here to guide us, instead of us feeling like we are responsible for pets and we are responsible for this and that, and I take the burden of the whole world on my shoulders about how animals are treated and stuff like that. But actually they all know exactly what they're doing and what's happening, and we should be honored to be with them. But it's that there are protectors as well. It's not just about us protecting animals, which obviously is a good thing, but in the bigger picture and at the soul level, they're all here supporting us to evolve. And I just think that's amazing. And that's a nice feeling because there's a lot of them around.
Mm-hmm. They quite outnumber us, as amazing as that is to believe, because there's quite a lot of us too, right? But it feels, you know, I remember, you know, yeah, I know, you know what I'm about to say, don't you? You know, he knows. Yeah, I don't remember exactly when I realized that a human being could keep a parrot as a companion, but I know it happened around age 7, because from age 7 to age 8, I apparently pestered my mother incessantly for a parrot. I wanted a parrot. I wanted to be with a parrot. And finally at 8, I guess my folks had had enough of it. And Perky, my first parakeet, came home to stay. And we were instant best friends. And, you know, it just felt like I can't imagine my life without. He was my instant best friend. He was my best friend until I left for college. And he lived an incredibly long life for a parakeet. And, you know, there are studies today, of course, because now we have time to do all of these studies about animal-human interactions that say that children tend to talk more with their pets when they're in stress or don't know what to do or just need comfort than they do with their siblings or their human friends or their parents. That was totally me. But I didn't mentally understand the dynamic or why I felt more comfortable to talk to Perky than I did to my human family or friends. And of course, when I found Danielle's work, you know, she talks about how animals are masters of unconditional love. And I often add for that, I know you are. Yeah. On the 5D level, on the 3D level, they just want what they want, right? Just like everybody else. But on the 5D level, they're masters of unconditional love. And I would also add unconditional self-love and self-acceptance, because I have yet to communicate with an animal that's like, you know, do I look fat in this collar? Or, you know, I don't think I have a very good personality. Nobody likes me, you know. I have yet to, the animals are all like, a lot of them will come in and be like, you know, I'm really good looking and smart. And it would be kind of amazing if we woke up. I often joke that if I woke up every morning and greeted myself the way Pearl does. I mean, the first thing he does every single morning when he sees himself is, you know, like, wow, I look good, you know. And I don't greet myself like that.
We should be doing that because you know, isn't it? It's amazing that we even exist, and what a beautiful world it was.
Incredible.
You know, and that what you say though is about how they see themselves as well is one of the things I'm struggling with, less so now. I'm working through it with Julie on our series.
Yes, definitely.
Is about animals that what started it is the lambs, because we're lambing here, and there was some lame lambs in the field, and I'm like, oh poor, and I know that they're well taken care of, and I know that they're getting the vet treatment, but I struggle so much. But the point is, animals don't see themselves as disabled. There's no emotion associated with that. Everything that we feel about that is emotion. You know, it's not that he's limping and that he's in pain. In my head, I'm going, he can't keep up with the others, he's going to be an outcast, he's not, you know, and it's all emotions. Animals like that, not interested in that. I'm fine, thanks, I'm doing absolutely fine. And whenever I connect to them, they tell me to mind my own business, essentially, because they're fine. Yeah. And that's what they're teaching me, is like, you're seeing suffering where suffering doesn't happen. Animals do not lie around worrying about their physical conditions. They just get on with it. They don't see themselves as disabled. They don't see themselves as disadvantaged. There's a big lesson there with animals about saying, look, we're okay, look at you guys. You know? Yeah.
Spend a little less time worrying about us and a little You know, and I see that every day with this one. I rescued him from a pet store. He was 5 weeks old. He was nest bullied. You can't see it, and he certainly doesn't show it, but he can't fly because they bit off his left wingtip. 3 of his 5 claws are missing, and he's got permanent damage to his left eyelid, and the inner membrane that kind of protects his eye. I mean, you'd never know it, and he certainly doesn't. I worry far more about.
He whistles at himself.
Every morning, it's like, I look good, and he spends all day calling all the ladybirds because they're going to want to check this out, right? So, you know, but I feel like that's really the pathway, because animals present with this, you know, soul level unconditional love and unconditional self-love and self-acceptance. Of course, a child who's still kind of forming in they're finding their way in the world, isn't fully, you know, domesticated, as Don Miguel Ruiz might call it, learning the ways of polite adult society. Of course, an animal is going to be the natural best friend and companion for a child that's seeking understanding. And it's just so innate that we don't really start to think about it until we grow up, and then we decide to do a white paper on it, right? We research it, and then we discover these fascinating facts, and then it starts to help us connect the dots in our own life. And I love how you've just kind of answered, you know, my next question, which is about, you know, how has talking with animals changed your life? Because it sounds profound.
It is. I mean, I discovered the muscle testing. Let me see. Now, I gave up my job. I had a breakdown, and my mum had dementia. Long story. And then I got better, and I went back to work, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And I just wanted, actually, to be honest, I just wanted to be at home with my chickens and my cat. And I couldn't say that to anyone. I couldn't say, you know, I knew I didn't want to be at work. I remember my husband actually saying, I'm actually a bit worried that the reason you don't want to be at work is because you'd rather be at home with the chickens and the cat. And I was thinking, that is actually absolutely why I don't want to be at work. But I can't tell anyone that, because nobody else understands that. I just sound like a lunatic. But I wanted to be at home. So I tried to find another way. And as things happened, I then started the muscle testing and healing the chickens. And that was really, really profound for me. And then, you know, the next stage was meeting Danielle's crowd, shall we say, and starting the animal communication. And then you're just like, oh my God, there's just this whole world out there now. It's like it's infinite. The things that we can do now, like, and the learning to do this and the confidence they give me allows me to say, I can now do anything I want. I really enjoy doing this with animals, but it's also just opened up my spiritual understanding and just my ability to really believe that I can do whatever I want now. And the animals have taught, you know, that sort of by achieving this and hearing it, because every single animal I talk to and every single conversation I have with people about animals and every single reading I have, there is in some part of it an animal giving a message both to the person I'm reading for and to me about how it's all going to be okay, and you just need to stop being so hard on yourself, and you just need to let go of this nonsense, and everything's just fine. And you're like, do you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe it's okay. And you know, and I look at animals with different eyes now, and I look at Sally the cat, and it's my cat, and that's, like you say, this absolute self-love, self-assured, whatever, no offense meant it, but when she wants something, she will just go for it. Emotion around it, she's not trying to hurt me, but if it means climbing over my face, she'll climb over my face to do it. You know, and watching animals around me now, I realize that we have built so much into us about behavior, our social, you know, about responsibilities and obligations and all this stuff that animals like that, whatever, don't care. That's not what I'm here for. There's a lot we can learn from that.
So, it's definitely a livelier world. So it feels, you know, it just feels like there's a lot of, I used to feel really lonely. I remember earlier in my life, especially, I had a series of jobs that, you know, my mind chose for me rather than my heart. And I remember early in the pandemic seeing, I I think it was a t-shirt that said, I've been practicing for social distancing my whole life, and it's not that I don't love people. It's just that the being a highly sensitive person, I loved Dr. Elaine Aron's work because it has been so instructive for me and kind of like understanding how I'm wired and that sort of thing. But, I just, as an introvert, I just need equal, if not even more time alone or just with my animals to recharge as I spend with people, which has really created a difficult balance being in a lot of public, like business and marketing roles, being a public speaker, being a college circuit speaker, those sorts of things, and just kind of feeling like, and it's interesting because I've never felt like I need recharge time away from my animals. I don't. In fact, I go to them so now I have this whole wider circle of friends. I used to in college, especially because I went to a very large school and even just my dormitory had its own zip code. A dormitory having its own postal code is kind of a thing, and it was really hard to ever find. So I would go to the park, our little park, and I would sit and I would see like a bunch of crows or grackles or, starlings or sparrows or whoever was around and just go and I'd sit with them, but I felt this distance, like, it's like I need them, but they don't need me, because they have their own little community. And now with animal communication, it doesn't feel polarized like that. It just feels like we're just being together and there's that mutual respect and that mutual appreciation, and the animal doesn't need us, but the animal isn't flying away either. The animal are running away, or it's just like there's this, like you were saying earlier, the animals have powerful life lessons to teach us, and so many of them are so willing, even after, like the elephant you talked about, they're still willing to connect with us even after having so many traumas at the hands of our species. They're still showing up. They're still, and it's a huge lesson in, forgiveness, self-forgiveness, empathy and compassion. And just, if your cat wanted space to be alone with the chickens or, the lambs or by herself, she would just take it. She wouldn't feel like she had to explain to her spouse or kittens or anybody else, she would just walk right over your face and go off to her love places.
They know this thing that we find so difficult to understand, and that is, if you're not taking care of yourself first, you can't help anyone else. You can't,
oh, brilliant.
That is just impossible for us to process. Even though I get it intellectually now, it's still really hard to practice that, because there's so deeply ingrained in us is this desire to, I don't think it's even a desire, it's almost like it's just a function to obey, to please, to perform for other people. Even once you're aware of it, it's still hard to step away from that. Cat never doesn't give it a second thought.
No,
I love watching her. She's physically really strong for a cat as well, and she will actually push back. Like if she will come here sooner or later, she'll come downstairs and she'll stand here, and if I try and push her out of the way from the keyboard, she will actually muscle up and go, no, I'm not moving. Just things like that. It's just like a constant reminder to go, I do as I please, Kate, and you could learn from that.
Yeah, it's wonderful when we share our lives 24/7, because then they have unlimited access to teach us things, right? Whether we particularly know we need to learn them or want to learn them or not. And it feels again very instructive, because maybe these urges and these instincts that we have, some of which have been, I think, really more fully awakened during this time of quarantine and social distancing, maybe there's so much right about that, and they have something to teach us about who we are and how we're wired and where we're perfectly placed, versus something we have to push away or hide or try to change. It's like, no, that's an essential facet of who you are. When you don't do that, when you don't pay attention to those instincts, when you don't follow those inner intuitive nudges, then things don't work well, and I come from a mental health and an eating disorders background. And, one of the things that I really learned from was an essay by the writer Anne Lamott. She talks about recovering from bulimia by just allowing herself to kind of eat whatever she wanted. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for everybody, but it was not about, binge eating. It was about losing that fear around certain foods. And she worked with a therapist for this. I don't know if it's still up on Salon, but I think it's called How I Recovered from Bulimia, or How I Stopped Fearing Food, or something like that. But she talks about how, she would just kind of let herself eat the Cheetos and the frosting for a while. And then slowly but surely over time, she started to notice now she wanted some roasted vegetables, and now she wanted a nice salad. And now food just became food. It wasn't like good food and bad food and food I should eat and food I shouldn't eat. It wasn't in the mental space anymore. It moved into the gut. It's like her gut brain, something that I don't even think we were talking about back when she wrote that article. Her gut brain was starting to kind of run the show and say, well, I feel like having this today, or I feel like having that today. And it just became, yeah, maybe I'll have a Cheeto, but maybe then I'll, have a nice salad, or I'll have something. And it's just the same thing with animals. It's like we have this tendency to, and I think it's our survival instinct gone awry again, but we have this tendency to kind of categorize good, bad, good behavior, bad behavior, and put our lens, if you will, or our spin on why an animal is acting a certain way, because we don't think that we can just ask them. And it's so much easier once we learn about, some of these techniques that you and I have learned with Danielle for, how to receive the information on all these channels, because then instead of mentalizing about it or coming up with theories or trying to change behavior that doesn't need to be changed, we can just say to the animal, so can you tell me what's going on? And just have a chat about it. Which really kind of leads me to the next piece. I'm assuming, but I'm hoping, of course, those of you who are watching or listening and have made it this far, you're probably pretty intrigued about this. Maybe you want to even try it yourself. Maybe it's even on your bucket list. So, Kate, what would be your advice for somebody who wants to give it a try and is in those early fearful, fluttery, oh, I must be the only one who can't do this sort of thing, or just doesn't really know where to start?
I would have to say I've come from a really scientific background, so I realize now that I've always been empathic, although I probably didn't know what that meant. And then even when I understood that, I still would not have seen that connection with psychic ability. So when I started this, there was a lot of people that went, oh, I've always known I'm different and I've always had this psychic ability, but I shut it down because I was teased or whatever. And I'm sitting there going, well, I had none of that. Like, so I had nothing, no idea, nada. So don't let that hold you back. And there was a couple of my teaching assistants and that said that, especially as I got further. And then I started doing the intuitive coaching, and then we started to qualify. And there's a bit of me going, but all these people, they've done this all their lives and now they're channeling it. I don't have that depth of perception. And there was a couple of people then, I think Anne-Marie might have been one of them, and they said, no, I was exactly the same. So don't let that put you off. That's what I would say. Absolutely. I think the other biggest lesson I learned is, if you are drawn to something, there's a good reason why you're drawn to it, and you're going to be good at it. Do you know anybody who loves what they do but isn't good at it? They may not be good at it in the way that other people define it. I don't know anybody who loves what they do that doesn't ultimately display a huge talent for what they're doing. That's because if you follow your heart, the rest will follow you. We all have the ability to do it. And if you're drawn to it, you've been drawn to it for a reason. And I would say just go for it. Obviously, I would recommend Danielle. I haven't learned with anybody else, but she attracts a certain type of person, and it's very obvious when you meet the community. A lot of them are very analytical, very highly, I wouldn't say competitive, but very highly driven people who've suddenly gone, oh, I can't do this corporate life anymore, or whatever. But I mean, there are a lot of not what you would consider normal woo-woo, wishy-washy, touchy-feely type people who just go, oh my God, this life isn't what I expected. And then, and then they dive into it. And now I've met, we're, and I say fruitcake proudly because I consider myself a raving fruitcake. I've met the most bundle of most joyful, bizarre, talented, eccentric, exotic people that I've ever met in my life, and I've never felt so at home. So I say just go for it.
Yeah,
You're gonna find your
I
people.
wholeheartedly agree. I hope, and there are a number, and I did survey a number of different different instructors, different courses, and ultimately it was my first big test in learning to trust information coming in elsewhere other than my mind, because I was just about to decide on a teacher, and I'd been looking all day, and I was just getting really frustrated because my mind was like, well, what about this, and what about that, and this and that and the other. And I remember I was just about to click on the thing and sign up, and it felt sort of right. It felt more right than anybody else. And then out of the corner of my eye, like right next to the book I was about to buy for this other teacher, I saw Danielle's book, and something about her just open, friendly face. And I was just like, just look for one more, just one more. And the moment I landed on her page and saw that the community's name was Be Open, and I watched a very brief video, and her energy and the joyfulness and the constant giggling and the smiling, and just the concept of let's play, let's have fun. If you're not having fun, why do it? And that was exactly what was driving me in this new direction, was like, but I'm not having fun in my life. I'm not having, of course, pandemic kind of imposed its own restrictions, but, I want to have more fun, like forever from now on. And everything, of course, I have studied with Sonia Choquette for quite a long period of time. And she also is, she's taught me, she says, I love woo, I love weird, like those are my people, like why would I want to be with anybody else, And so I was already kind of in that mindset, and there was so much about Danielle's work with the emphasis on play and lightness and laughter and having fun, and how that helps move through blocks in ways that heavy mentalizing and strong, kind of more darker emotions just often doesn't have the power to do. And I just was like, I'm just going to trust my gut. And thank goodness, because it was my first test. I don't love the word test, but it was my first lesson in receiving information in a way that didn't come through my analytical, corporate, regimented mind, right? There was just a lot of joy. There was a lot of feathers, a lot of fur, and a lot of the things, and a lot of fins, and a lot of shells, and a lot of scales, and a lot of the stuff that I love most in life. And to get to talk every day with people, I mean, the conversations that we have in Be Open, and when we're on our training calls, and the friendships that that we make in the community are so meaningful. I don't sit there going, okay, when is this conversation going to end? I'm kind of like hoping that it won't.
Yeah. I have, everyone, because I started the course just actually as lockdown happened here, and it sort of been March last year. And I hadn't seen, apart from, I do wild swimming, and apart from people there who I meet on a completely different level, they don't know anything about my personal life. We just meet, we swim, we go our separate ways. I hadn't spoken to another human being other than the people in Be Open, and I didn't miss anybody. Isn't that awful? And I suddenly realized that
wonderful.
my entire community of people were people I had literally met in the last month, and that was it. And so it goes on. And I will say, though, for people starting out, I don't think Danielle's crowd is necessarily for everybody, but I do think it's important you follow your heart, because you will find your niche. And I think what Danielle offers, which is what was good for me, is she goes to the soul level. A lot of people, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know that.
I wasn't either.
But by God, that was exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't know that was a way to get there. And now I've gone into the soul level coaching. We're going even deeper and deeper. And this is all a huge learning journey for me about me. But I am learning, in doing so, I'm going to be able to help other people. But, you know, I started it for me. The soul level stuff for humans, the stuff with animals is for animals. And I love that, although it ends up being for people as well, because people want to know what's going on.
It sure does. Boy, I surprise people every day when I'm doing our sessions, and I share that we're going to have this piece called the soul level lesson in the session. And I've had so many people say, I totally wasn't expecting that. It was so much more than what I expected. And it's so helpful. And it's been really cool. And then there are the people that really aren't expecting it, because they're just like, why is my, Daniel uses the example of the dog peeing in the plant, and just kind of wanting to fix that behavior. And it's like, but there's so much more here. And so you're right. It's a good message to think through. There are a number of disciplines. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's necessary to study if you're one of the people that is naturally open. Maybe that's been your path and you're comfortable with the concept. But for me, it's been really helpful, and it sounds like for you as well, because it gets the mind on board. It explains to the mind what's going on. Yeah.
But if somebody is comfortable with that stuff, then the only thing to remember is imagination is real. We think imagination's not real and therefore can't be trusted, but actually we're learning now, of course it's real, because why would you imagine A and not B? You imagined A for a reason, therefore A is relevant. That's the other thing. I think that's what a teacher gives you, and for me, without somebody validating that for me, I wouldn't have got any further than that.
And plus there's the community, there's the community of students, there's the connect, there's the, I know, see how you don't hesitate when you ask for what you want, you just go for it, don't you? He says, I go for it. But there's the community, and it's just becomes, people that feel like, where are my people? Well, they're here. And so many of the great teachers do also have books. They have communities. It is possible to learn a lot just from visiting the websites. And there's lots of great communities out there. And I think that's why there's so much room. Somebody might be thinking, oh, there's so many communicators out there. In fact, I thought that, like, why would the world need me? And when you think about how many animals are in the world and how many people are keeping company with animals, and how many more have started keeping company with animals since the lockdowns and the pandemic, and you realize there will never be enough of us animal communicators. There will never be enough people who have experienced this firsthand to meet the needs. So there is always room. And if there's a calling, if there's I would just say, if there's an interest, then it's a path worth following, because there is always going to be a need. And speaking of which, each person, you and I were chatting just a little bit before we started recording about how you do some very unique things with your animal communication practice, where, things that I'm not familiar with, that I don't know how to do. In addition, for instance, you've incorporated muscle testing, and you also have these emotion code and ask your guide services, and there are different things that can benefit different people. And so I'd love for you to share just a little bit about how people can connect with you and some of the things that you offer, because there's a very good chance that somebody listening or watching is going to feel very connected, very, very much vibing with you, and want to reach out. And I'd love them to know more about how to find you and how you work with people and their precious animals.
Oh, thanks, Shannon. I don't do astro guiding, though I will say, but I do.
It said ask your guides, and ask your guides. Yeah, sorry, it sounded like I said astral guiding. That sounds fascinating, but I don't know what that is.
I'm going to have to look that up. There's a message there.
I don't know what that is.
It must be some out of body stuff, which I would love to do.
I know, right? Seriously.
Sorry, ask my guides. Yes, so I do. So muscle testing is basically the basis of the emotion code, which is Dr. Bradley Nelson, which you can look up, which is just a very simple way of identifying emotions and releasing them. Hugely powerful. It's absolutely incredible. I qualified in that. I also do the body code, which is like the big brother of the emotion code, and includes the emotion code, but it looks at all energies, not just sorry, that's my guides.
Yeah. I hear that. We got to wrap it up.
And the body code looks at other energies as well, and toxins and misalignments and stuff like that. So it's basically the premise that it's really an energy healing, but it's quite it's like it's quite detailed, and you can address it from a number of issues. I've done it really successfully with a lot of animals for both health issues and behavioral issues. So that's called body code. And I do Reiki and energy healing as well. But I mean, I sort of, once you start learning these things, you tend to wrap them all up together. Ask Your Guides is just intuitive work, really working with people, asking questions and just following your intuition to help them uncover things. And that's a sort of precursor to the soul level coaching, which I have finished, but I have to go through the practicum, which is where you actually go through like a real life scenario with a couple of clients under supervision, just to make sure. So all bases around really finding balance and trying to find joy for people. So if anyone's interested in anything like that, it's quite simply katefoggo.com. It's all on there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So we have so appreciated. Yeah, maybe next time we can do a Zoom with the lambs and the cat, right? Yeah. I've so appreciated the chance to chat with you today. It's, you're one of my new friends in Be Open, and I absolutely adore our connect and the greater community. And I really want to encourage anyone who's listening or watching, any place that you may find this podcast or video series, to come join us and play with us. Definitely like and subscribe so that you can be alerted when we do, because I've got a lot of wonderful people in the pipeline that we'll be able to talk to, and each one brings a little bit of a different perspective. There's so much out there if you're curious, if you're interested. If being in lockdown or pandemic life has kind of elevated your awareness that maybe there's some missing piece in your life that you're just not really quite sure where to look for, it might be here. We would love to have you. You can find Kate at katefoggo.com, and that's FOGGO.com. And I'll put the information in the show notes. You can find us at animallovelanguages.com. Yeah, this is me and my micromanager, Pearl, who he's been supervising me for 22 years, and apparently I still have a lot to learn. And we are so grateful for that you've shared a little bit of your time and your day with us, and look forward to connecting with you now and in future episodes. So sending you all the blessings and all the love from Shannon, Kate, Pearl, and all of the animals. Alrighty. Have a great day. Bye for now.